Alright, so the plan today is to make this blackjack game a little bit more interactive. So the goal is to create a hit method and stay method, which will allow us to hit and get additional cards. So earlier we did the flip method, which allows us to flip these cards. And all it does is changes the image. So obviously this is not changing the characteristics of the card. There's the flip method. So what we're going to try to do is, in my world, come up with a hit method. Again, that adds cards. It's going to do a couple things. Add a card to the world. Maybe add a card, a card object to the array list of cards, either the players or the dealers, so we can keep track of the score. Remember, that's how the score is calculated. Essentially, uses an array list of card objects. And we've already taken care of the ace and all that kind of stuff. So basically at this point, we need we're going to start with a hit method. So first let me inspect these cards to show you a couple things about the X and Y coordinate. So this 7 of diamonds, these are all the attributes of a card. These are called fields. And the X and Y coordinate for that is 425, X, and Y is 300. Now, vertically, this is 400 pixels. So this is about 100 pixels shifted from the bottom is where the center of these cards are. And you can see that the X coordinate, this X coordinate will be bigger than the last one. It's 550. So 550, this one's 425, which is a distance of 125 pixels. So the following card, whenever we hit it into the world, will be 125 less pixels, which would be around 300. Not around 300, it will be 300. And it's the same thing up here. And the Y coordinate for the dealer's cards are symmetrical to the Y coordinate of the player's cards. They're 100. So 100 from the top is 100. 100 from the bottom is 300. So that gives us an idea of what we're going to do with this hit method. So first, let's add some characteristics up for some more fields. I'm going to do a private int player X, private int player Y, private hit, private stay. Now, what these objects are just going to be buttons. Hit button, stay button, depending on whether you are hitting or staying, we're going to allow it to interact with the mouse. So the player X is going to be 300 as well as the dealer X. Now that's the X coordinate of the next card that we will put down in the world. One of the harder things of getting this game to become interactive is to figure out where to put cards at any time in the game. Well, the Y coordinates will remain the same, 100 and 300, but the X coordinates will get smaller and smaller because we're going to be stacking them to the left. But they're both going to start off at 300. Let's see, I must have spelled that differently. Well, this would be dealer X. So it's both the X coordinate of the player and the X coordinate of the dealer. So I got that. I'm also going to initialize hit and initialize stay. Those are just buttons. Right now they don't do anything. But I'm going to go ahead and add them to the world. The first one will have an X coordinate of 100. The Y coordinate will be 200, which will be going to put it right in the middle vertically. Both of them. And then I'll just have the stay button a little to the right. Which would be, let me try 200, 200. Okay. And before I even do the hit method, let me just show that they come up whenever we reset our world. There they are. Okay. So, and we've added the fields, the player X and the dealer X, which will be the X coordinate of the next card. So, the toughest thing we'll have to do is to create this hit method. Public void hit Boolean is player. Now I have a Boolean is player because the hit method is pretty much going to do the same thing whether it's a player or a dealer, but it's going to be a little bit different. So because there is a difference, I'm going to have if is player, which by the way means it's true. That Boolean variable is set to true. You could it's a little extra or more than you need here, but you can set it equal to true. Okay, and otherwise, if it's not the player, it means it's the dealer. We're going to do something else. So here's where we got to figure out what all the hit method does. So first off, I'm going to get a card. I'm going to get deck.getCards.getZero. That is the 0th card in the deck. Okay, which is just basically like the next card to be played. Okay, and I'm going to player.addC. So that is adding that card to the array list for player, because remember that's how we keep score of the hand, is to the array list of cards. So I'm going to do that. I'm also going to add it to the world. C, we'll go to, well, the x coordinate will be player x. That's why we have that variable there. And the y coordinate will be 300. And then we have those three things. Okay, so then we want to do a couple more things. We want to take player x, and we want to set it equal to player x minus 125. So what that does is the next time hit gets called for a player, the x coordinate will be back 125. Okay, lastly, remember the deck is the unused cards that we have. So I will get the cards for deck, and I'll remove the 0th card. So now we're actually using the 0th card. We don't want it in the deck anymore. So next time we can get the 0th card, pretty much every time we can get the 0th card, would be like getting the bottom card from the deck, or the top card of the deck, however you want to look at it. Okay? So that's that. And then I'm basically going to copy this and then just change a couple of things. I'm still going to get the 0th card. This is going to be dealer.addC. I'm going to add object C to dealer X. And remember the Y coordinate of the dealer is 100. So now that vertical is closer to the top as opposed to the bottom. Here I'm going to set the dealer X, subtract 125 from that, and then remove it from the deck. And then one additional thing that we will do, actually I'll show it without it first. Alright, so, well actually I'll need to call that hit method. I'll do it in the constructor. So a constructor is called before we ever hit the run button. This is just what the board looks like when it is constructed or created. So let me call hit true, hit false. So think about what that's doing. That's giving two players 2 cards to the player, 2 cards to the dealer. Okay, and that's what happens. Get 2 cards to the player, 2 cards to the dealer. Now the one thing we want to fix is whenever we give a card to the dealer, we don't want to be able the player to see it, because right now if the player was playing this game, he would know 2 of the cards. You know, he's got 19 plus something, and we would, you know, pretty much kind of have a good idea that the dealer had busted, so we would probably stay if we hadn't already, you know, hit a bunch of times. So what we're going to do is flip any card over that is the dealer's card. So anytime we hit the dealer, so let me remove, well, I'll keep him there for a second. Anytime we hit the dealer down here, I'm going to do C.flip. So that's a card object that got added to the world, and all it's going to do is just change over. Okay? So this is not how we want the world to start. We want 2 cards each, but this just shows us that the hit method works. Okay? So I'm going to delete those, and now take in some interaction between the mouse in the world to figure out when we want to add these cards. So let's what we're going to do is create an act method. Now this method is a special method. It's not just the method that I wanted to call act. It actually is really important in Greenfoot. It's what gets called every time that you hit that run button. In fact, act gets called about 50 times per second in that standard speed setting. Okay, so what I'm going to do in the act method is I'm just going to check Greenfoot.mouseClicked, which we've used before, but that just tells you yes or no. Are you clicking this button? I'm going to call the hit button. So hit is an object, and it'll tell you if you are hitting that object or not. Well, if I am, I want to call the method hit true, which is this thing right here we just did. I want to give a card to the player. So now when this game gets played, I'll start it again. And the reason why the game takes so long to load at the beginning is because every time a deck gets created, that constructor has to get 52 unique cards, and actually there's a lot of computation there. So, but now when I run, nothing happens. But whenever we hit, I get a new card, and I can hit, and I can play the game. Okay, so that will allow us to get cards. And by the way, these cards are going to the array list for player. So the score for player would be like 22 plus 32, 42. Okay, so it's keeping track of all that. So the last thing that I want to do in part 3 is to kind of tweak the way the dealer hand works. So a dealer has a prescribed way to play the game. If the dealer currently has 16 or less, he'll hit. And if he has 17 or more, he'll stay. So what we're going to do, if we reset this, it's just what we want at the beginning. We're going to create it to where the dealer will kind of go ahead and get as many, kind of go ahead and play his hand. So if he's got less than 16 right now, we're gonna get him just to kind of keep hitting until he doesn't. And then the player will kind of take over and play. Okay, and then we'll kind of go through just one little quick gameplay, and then we'll talk about what we'll do in part 4. So what we want to do here is while, which is a while loop. As long as something is true, it's going to repeat this. Get score, which is the method right below it here. I have to pass dealer, which gives an integer, and it's the point value of the dealer's hand is less than 17. I want to hit false. So I'm actually going to get the dealer to hit as long as that is true. So let's try it again. So notice he's got one hit there. So we know he's held. Okay. He's got a jack. He's got 2 other cards. We don't know what they are. Okay. He could be already gone over, or he could be a 21. Okay, so we don't know. So I have 12, and if I play the game, I would hit. Obviously, I would be gone over there with a 22. And then if I pause, we can go in and look. 12, 18. So he held at 18. We busted at 22, so the dealer beat us there. So that's basically how we're going to end up the Blackjack Part 3. What we're going to try to do in Part 4 is do 2 things. Number 1, get the stay button to become interactive. So what stay will do is whenever you click stay, essentially you'll determine who won based on the scores and display a message showing who won the game. Okay, and also that would happen if the player has already busted. So if I already have 25, we want the game to end and not be able to keep hitting cards. We want the game to stop. So if one of those 2 things happen, either the player busts or the stay button is clicked, we will display a message. Okay, and one extension we could do to that is to kind of keep a score, depending on how much time we have. Keep a score of the dealer wins and the player wins, so you can continuously play the dealer on the same deck of cards and keep track of who wins the most, because blackjack is not just a one-time game. It's really a skill that is played in the long run. The person who plays smarter in the long run.